Hi, welcome to another episode of High Quality Quiz Bowl content. As many of you know, the Illinois postseason poll is happening right now. It's live for a few more days, and you should go definitely vote in that because more votes we have, the better our democracy is. So, um, without further ado, I'm going to be going through my top 15 individuals. So let's just go right into it. I'm joined by Arjun. Say hi.
Hi.
So yeah, just decided to make this video so that people can maybe I can share what my thought process was going into looking at the stats and going over what I know about players, and also maybe thinking about some players that aren't as well represented um, in the online community. So anyway, going through my top 15, my top four is I'll be ranking them shortly, but my top four is in no particular order: Ben Fry, Dylan Bowman, myself, Govind, Prabhakar, and Ethan Ashbrook from Uni. So these four stuck out as the top four because, Govind and I were the top two at solo, um, and we're also like the captains of our teams. Ethan is, I guess, not really a co-captain, but he's like the first or second scorer on UD most of the time. I think he was first scorer at every event this year, possibly. Um, so us three on the top two teams, I think we're all pretty even. And then Ben Fry is led Chicago Christian to a lot of success this year as primarily as like the by far the main scoring option on his team. Uh, so that's why I consider these four to be the top four. I'll go into why I consider there to be more tiers below shortly. But right now I'll just go into ranking them. So my number one was Govind. Govind won solo. Govind was the lead scorer or second scorer on Stevenson for most of the season, and at NEQT State he was, I think, the leading scorer in the prelims. He also had the highest power count at NEQT State, which I think is definitely shows how good he is at history, geography, current events, religion, mythology. Those are his main subjects. So, Arjun, as his teammate, do you have any comments as to how good Govind is? I suppose.
Uh, well, obviously, I agree with this number one rank because, like you said, Goins. Everyone already knows Goins a top specialist. Like we've seen his NHP perform, and just like being in the same room as him, like there's security when you're a team and you hear history or geography. You know he's probably more of the exception. But like you said, like Scoble solo finals, I don't think even Govind predicted that he would end up winning it. But the fact that he pulled in, though the tiebreaker was a history question, so I guess he had an edge. The fact that he was able to pull it in, and like win the entire like event, probably speaks to his generalist ability as well. So he's definitely one player.
Yeah, I agree. So, oh yeah, I forgot to go. So this is how I actually divided the top four. I guess I've already ranked Govind, but I can just go through it. So I decided to rank each of us based on our generalism ability and specialism ability. So for generalism, I thought the order went Ben. Actually, in this order that I have up here. So this is like my generalism rank. For us, I think Ben is better than I am as a generalist just because he leads an entire team by himself. I haven't really had to study a lot of my off categories like history and like beliefs. So those aren't really my strong suits, but Ben is pretty solid all across the board, especially strong in literature and science and thought. Um, so that's my generalism rank. I think I'm better than Govind as a generalist, um, just based on like what our knowledge bases are. Like my weak areas are not as pronounced as his weak areas. I'm more solid across a wider range of subjects than he is, but only marginally. So I don't think I'm that much of a better generalist than Govind is, but I'm enough of a better generalist to be above him. And then Ethan is the worst generalist of us. Um, Not that he's a bad journalist at all. It's just that like he's never had to study like science or history, so he really only knows like one of the big three. Um, so anyway, specialism goes Govind, and then I think Ethan and I are tied, and then Ben Fry. So Govind, I consider because he's basically just the best history specialist. I consider him to be the best specialist among us. and also in geography and RM. Just like he has the lockdown ability across a wider range that none of the rest of us have. I consider myself tied with Ethan. Ethan and I guess we both specialize in one of the big three, and then an off category. I'm good at fine arts and science, and he's best at literature and RMPSS. I would consider my fine arts and his literature to be on about the same level. Um, and obviously, literature is a more pronounced category than fine arts, which would tip the scales towards him. But I think that my science is a higher tier than his RMPSS. So for that region, I considered myself a better specialist, just deeper in my categories than Ethan is, or not deeper, but like about tied. I think it all evens out. We had about the same number of powers at Penn Bowl. I think he might have had one more than I did, but if in our games we are about even. Um, and then Ben is like compared to the rest of us the worst specialist. Um, just because he's a generalist doesn't have the ability to branch out like the rest of us do, or not branch out, go deeper. Like, so do you have any comments about this, Arjun?
I will have a question like for like Ben specifically, like he's clearly a generalist and stuff, but like are there any like subjects that like are clearly a strong category like deep in?
Yeah, he's good at literature. He's good at thought. He's good at the physical sciences. I don't think he's that good at bio, but I think he is good at like chem, physics, math. Um, he's told me that he's bad at history. I don't think he's that bad at history. But history is definitely his weakest out of the big three, and especially compared to a lot of the other teams, just because like history players are better on average than like literature and science players. It's just the way it is. Um, so I think that history is definitely his weakest. So anyway, going through this, just like weighing each one individually, or weighing each of these individual rankings together, evenly, you get 2, Dylan, 3, Ben, 4, Ethan. Which I think is about correct, but I think we are all in like a similar tier. And had Ethan been present at Scobel Solo, I think he also would have placed very highly. So yeah. So into the next tier, I'll just take this out. Um, and these tiers aren't like hard and like these aren't like strict tiers. Like I consider everyone in 4 to be better at everything else than everyone in the second tier. Um, and then the top 4 to be better than everyone in the second tier. But I do think that it's helpful in making this list to be able to subdivide. So in my next tier, I have Arjun from Stevenson, Matthew Lee from IMSA, and Jonathan from Uni. So I guess I'll go over each player here. I didn't in my mind. I already had the order set, but so I didn't do like a generalism specialism weighing. But I guess I'll go over each of these players. So Arjun, I think that you're probably like a top 3 generalist in the state, along with me and Ben. Um, just like being able to contribute a lot while playing alongside the best history player in the state. When history is your best category, I think speaks a lot to your generalism ability. And you did very well at Scobel Solo, which shows also, like in the prelims, you did very well, and in the playoffs. Matthew Lee, also a very good generalist from IMSA. He's by far the leading scorer on the 3rd or 4th best team in the state, which is impressive. And then Jonathan, who is almost as good as like Ethan and I. He's only a junior, so definitely a very good player. Probably a better generalist than Ethan, but a worse generalist than I am. So the way that I ranked these was you, Arjun, Jonathan, and then Matthew Lee. So do you have any comments here? I mean, I know we said before the video that you wouldn't talk about yourself, but do you have any comments about Jonathan or Matthew?
Okay, so ignoring myself, I think Jonathan like definitely is like probably one of the like we're talking about like Govan's like lockdown like geography and like the sense of assurance. Like I'd have to assume like when you hear like a geography or biology toss up or even world history, like do you get like this similar feeling like where like this feeling like of assurance or like lockdown? Because That's like the feeling I get from Jonathan. Like if there's a bio toss when we're playing you guys, there's like David Lee's good at science, so like there's like some tosses you just know Jonathan's gonna get it. So I think he like definitely gets points for the specialist category there.
Yeah,
But
definitely. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there.
oh,
But yeah, Geo has definitely been a long time just been the category that gets locked down on our team, especially last year at HNCT with geography being emphasized in the NEQT distribution, and I guess the geography being, yeah, I mean, he just did very well in the geography last year in HNCT, and it was the main reason why we were winning games. So Jonathan in geography, and he's better at geography than he is at bio, but he's also very good at bio and world history and other areas of history. Um, so yeah, in those areas, he's definitely a lockdown player. Definitely a very helpful specialist to have on the uni team where we have no coverage of history or bio or geo. So yeah,
uh,
and then Matthew, I honestly have no idea
yeah, that's what I was
which
gonna ask. Like,
areas.
what are his like categories?
So uh,
'Cause he was a history player like when he was a freshman at least.
yeah, when he was a freshman and sophomore, he was IMSA's history player. I think he still does some history. He still did history last year alongside Vinay, for IMSA. But I think right now okay. So I played on Illinois B with him at NASAT, and he said his best areas were visual arts, bio, and some history. I think, um, which I agree with. I think I've his visual arts at NASAT impressed me, um, and in our game against him at Early Bird, because we only played him once this year, I think he got a decent number of buzzes. Um, I don't exactly remember what categories they were in, but I think it's sufficient to say that he is the leading scorer on by far, or not by far, but he's definitely the dominant generalist on a top four team in Illinois, and I think just that accolade by itself is enough to put him in the top echelon of players. The next tier, I suppose, at this point it gets hazy. I'll just go through who I ranked. I put at 8th Liam Starnes from Barrington. In a similar situation to Matthew, Barrington and IMSA are very even teams in skill. Liam is the lead scorer for Barrington at, I think, most events, and he was certainly the lead scorer at NEQT State, where he had a very strong performance. I think he had like over 2 powers a game or something like that, and he was like by far the lead scorer on Barrington. He just has less journalism ability than Matthew does. Probably better specialist ability. I think Liam's better history than Matthew is. And then at 9th, I had Sophie Netzel from Glenbard West. I know she's very good. It's very ambiguous as to how good she is, not known, because she hasn't been able to attend tournaments, unfortunately. But just from like 3 years of NASAT, I have seen how good Sophie is, and she's definitely earning of at least a top 10 spot on this list, and it's unfortunate that she's not able to attend more stuff to show how good she is. But yeah, do you have any comments about these two players?
Nah, I think I agree, but like Liam's like obviously I've seen like how good he's in history. For Barrington, isn't there a little bit more even though than what it is with stuff? Or,
Sorry, you cut out for a second. Could you repeat that?
like for Barrington scoring compared to IMSA, I feel like it's more even. Like it's not like Liam's like the dominant scorer at most tournaments, but I think just by virtue of history specialism, he deserves to be up there. But I think journalist wise, Matthew would probably edge him out still.
Yeah. Barrington is definitely a lot more even with Abraham and Roxanne covering the other parts of the big three. Um, yeah, Matthew does more. I don't know. Like definitely scores more, has higher power counts. Don't know if that's specifically because he has less support or um, because he's like a better player. But I don't know where I'm going with this. Liam is good. I put him lower than Matthew for the reasons that you outlined. Probably a worse generalist. Specialism not exactly confirmed because Matthew didn't attend that much stuff this year, but Matthew's stats at the few tournaments that he did attend were sufficient to put him in that tier. So yeah, and then everyone else. So I guess we can probably just go. I'll just rank them all, and we can go through them one by one. So 10th is Danny Kim from Fremd. 11th, Sheesh Subramanian from Hoffman Estates. Justin Whitmar from Buffalo Grove. Thomas Mercurio from Hinsdale Central. Dennis Reppin from Jones College Prep. and Nathan Clack from Williamsville. Um, and I had Stan on the list before, but I unfortunately had to cut him, so I guess Stan 16th. So yeah, I guess we can start talking about Danny. So Danny Kim, the strongest player on Fremd, plays a similar role to Fremd as Matthew and Liam do to their teams. Or I guess Matthew's more of a central generalist, more like Liam plays to his team, where Liam is best at history, geography, so some social science, I think. Danny is strong at literature, thought, fine arts, those areas. And Brian and Shreya cover the rest for Fremd. So yeah, I think Danny's just strong. He's had some good performances throughout the year. He had a strong performance on NEQT State, putting up almost 2 powers a game, and ran it pretty close against us, albeit we didn't have Ethan. But that was definitely one of our closer games of the afternoon. Yeah, I mean, I think Danny's just like a really solid player. Do you have any comments about him?
No, I think you covered it all basically.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. At this point, it's like with Danny. I mean, he's clearly like a very good player, so there's not really much to discuss. I think once you get down here, it'll become a little bit hand wavy as to who's better than who. But anyway, Ashish in 11th. This is where we get to players who are like the top generalists on teams that aren't in the top 10. So like Hoffman Estates, Buffalo Grove, Jones College Prep. Williamsville is top 10, in my opinion at least. But like Ashish, Justin, and Dennis are all like these top players on like 80-90% of the scoring on teams that are outside of the top 10 or maybe even out of the top 15. And this is where we get into the debate of how much does generalism on a decent team compare to specialism and captainship on an elite team, as seen in Danny and Thomas and like Liam. So anyway, I decided to put Ashish at 11th because he did very well in NEQT State, putting about 2 powers a game, similar to Danny, I think slightly higher. In addition to that, Ashish is a very good geography specialist and has good coverage in other areas of the canon. I'm not sure exactly what he's best at outside of geography, but his stats have been very impressive this year. So I decided to put him here. So what's your take on the whole, like, how much does generalism on a decent team compare to specialism on an elite team?
I think like when you get like to like the harder levels, like I'd say like NQT State was probably like harder than most of the tournament teams that played this year. I guess that's when like it really starts to differentiate because it's not like they're going to like when you make up power stats, like that indicates a certain level of depth regardless of the team you're on. So I think like Ashish, like even though he might not have as strong of a teammate as say like Thomas does, like the fact that he's putting up these sort of power numbers on NQT State, which is fairly hard, indicates that he's able to be sufficiently deep. So I think that in itself is fine, even if his team isn't that strong. Like he definitely deserves his place, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. I think that just as you said, going by raw power count is always going to be a solid indicator of how good you are because it just shows like it's like the ultimate equalizer between specialist and generalist. Just like how many things do you know a lot about? So anyway, to continue on to a similar player to Ashish, Justin Whitmar. He may be better than Ashish, maybe worse. The problem is Justin wasn't able to attend any UT State or many other tournaments this year, so it's not exactly clear how he stands. He attended NASAT tryouts, or actually both Ashish and Justin attended NASAT tryouts. They both did decently. So yeah, I mean, I just put Justin below Ashish. I think they're pretty similar in skill. Justin did very well on IS 188, as did Ashish. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say there. 13th, Thomas Mercurio. Thomas, captain of Hinsdale Central, didn't have any really good performances until NEQT State this year, where he had almost 2 powers a game. I think he had like 22 and 13 or something like that. And like Thomas, definitely a breakout performance for him. Very strong. Yeah, I mean he's the top scorer on like a top 8, top 9 team. Yeah, I mean, I think his lit specialism and generalism across the board, like, solid player. I put him below Ashish and Justin just based on, like, I consider Justin and Ashish to be similar level of player, and Ashish outpowered Thomas on NAQT State. So the logical step was to put Thomas below them. Although I did put him above Dennis Reppin, and that's because I think that I guess it's more the in my mind. There's like a sort of success factor that goes along with things, where it's like Thomas contributes a significant amount to a team that placed in the top four at NAQT State, as opposed to Dennis, who contributed comparatively more, but to a lower tier team. I think they placed like 10th or 11th or something like that, which is still a solid finish. But I considered Thomas's performance to have more of an impact. And maybe that's just me like catering to teams that are good, and like it's not that Thomas gets carried by his teammates or anything like that. I just think that the success factor it does play a role here, and so that's why I decided to put Thomas above Dennis. If that makes any sense. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think so, but like even then, like doesn't that go back to like the whole thing we were saying about like the sheesh debate, like how much should it matter if you're like a huge scorer on like a team with less support comparatively to like a person who comparative scores less PPG on a better team? Like how do you like reconcile that with like your success factor thing?
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is the point where raw power numbers do not line up with the ranking here. Um, I think Thomas might have outpowered him on IS 188, but Dennis outpowered Thomas by a semi significant margin, maybe like half a power game, which is indicative of skill. And I think it does put them in the same tier. But I think the tiebreaker for me, for these two otherwise pretty similar in tier players, was the fact that Thomas has been able to contribute so much to a top level team, and putting up wins against a lot of good teams, compared to Dennis, who has done a lot for a team that maybe has not seen as much success, although they are still, Jones College Prep still placed very highly at NEQT State. So I guess that does bring Dennis into the conversation. I don't know like nothing about him. I've played him once. He seemed pretty good. His stats definitely speak for themselves, for himself. Just generally solid player. And then in the 15th spot, I had Nathan Clack, who actually did not have that solid of a performance on SCT, but I decided to put him here because of two performances. His performance at NASAT tryouts this year, which I found to be very impressive, and HFT, where he put up like 3 or 4 powers a game on HFT and outpowered a bunch of players whom I have beneath him on the unnamed 15 through 30 part of this list. So yeah, what's your take on these? Or I guess just Nathan. We've gone over everyone else.
I don't know. Like we played Williamsville at NEQT State, and like this was the first time we played them, and he felt like I don't know. He felt generally solid on literature. Like I don't know. I haven't played him outside of that game, but like generally his stats have been very good. So I assume must be good. Like definitely put all numbers across all his tournaments.
Yeah, Nathan is really solid at lit. Honestly, like he cooked me really badly in one of the DSAT tryout rounds we played. I think like out of 20 toss ups, he had like 7 or 8, and I had like maybe 3 or 4. Like that was definitely like that definitely solidified in my mind that Nathan was a very good player, and maybe not his skill wasn't completely represented by his SCT stats.
Wow.
So yeah, that's my top 15 individuals. Perhaps I'll have rankings for other subjects or teams. I might do a team one. But yeah, thank you for watching. Thanks for coming on, Arjun, and see you next episode.